16-year-old, but I'm here to tell you about a different kind of stock. It's called Better Futures, a stock for social change that's not about making money. Instead, you invest to help students like me go to college, which ends up making the future better for all of us. My name is Alicia, and I'm your dividend.
Invest in better futures with UNCF. Visit uncf.org/invest. A mind is a terrible thing to waste, but a wonderful thing to invest in. Brought to you by UNCF and the Ad Council.
And you can invest in UNCF as well. We have a link to their website on our page in the community links section. We're going to get back to that discussion that we had earlier on in our first hour. And we were talking about the March on Washington, and 50 years later, what has changed in America, and what would Martin say? Again, the 1963 March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom was focused on economic inequality. The landmark pieces of legislation passed on the heels of that march were intended to provide equal access to employment, housing, public accommodations, and to ensure voting rights. Still, although economic conditions have improved since 1963, severe inequalities still persist. And if you remember, what we said earlier about the number of homeless versus the number of high school graduates, but in any event, severe inequality still persists. Poverty rates are down and education levels are up, but the black unemployment rate of 12.6% is nearly double that of whites and almost the same as it was in 1963, 50 years later. What's changed in America, and what would Martin say? Some of the hard-fought rights, if you will, are now under attack thanks to a deluge of state-based legislation in recent years aimed at restricting the rights to vote for people of color. And the U.S. Supreme Court recently gutting key provisions of the Voting Rights Act. Over 10 million Americans, largely people of color and young people, don't have the forms of ID required under the new laws and may not be able to vote in states where these restrictive laws have been enacted. And finally, and I don't think that this is a coincidence that another organization is celebrating a milestone birthday in August. Some 10 years after the March on Washington, the American Legislative Exchange Council was founded. It was formed under the first Ronald Reagan administration and is a so-called nonpartisan association of conservative lawmakers and corporations who share a common belief in, and I quote, limited government, free market, federalism, and individual liberty. But the reality is, this corporate-funded American Legislative Council, its global corporations and state politician partners vote behind closed doors to try to rewrite, that is, state laws that govern our rights. These so-called model bills reach into almost every area of American life and are often direct benefit to the corporations that sponsor them. Through ALEC, corporations hand state legislatures the changes of the law they desire that directly benefit their bottom line. Along with legislators, corporations also have membership to ALEC. I mean, whatever happened to our representative government? But in any event, corporations sit on all 9 ALEC task force and vote for legislators to approve model bills. They have their own corporate governing board, which meets jointly with the legislative board. And ALEC does say that the corporations do not vote on the board, but corporations fund almost all of ALEC's operations. Participating legislations, overwhelmingly conservative Republicans, then bring those proposals home to you and I and introduce them in our state houses across the country as their own brilliant ideas and important public policy innovations without disclosing that corporations crafted and voted on these bills. ALEC boasts that it has over 1,000 of these bills introduced by legislative members every year, with 1 in every 5 of them enacted into law. Now, what are some of these model legislations? Well, the Stand Your Ground law, the law that the George Zimmerman jury hid behind in the Trayvon Martin case. The Voter ID Act that we discussed earlier. And recently, ALEC has has committed itself to opposing increases in the minimum wage. We already talked about, one of the reasons for the high rate of homelessness. Folks who just simply aren't making enough money, and they've even called for a repeal of minimum wage laws. They're also pushing a bill to prevent local efforts to enact living wage requirements. And if you're not familiar with what the living wage is, what the living wage is what a person would have to make in order to live, taking into account inflation and everything else. So again, in 2012, 2013, the nation will see more homeless people than new high school graduates. So 50 years later, what has changed? And what would Martin say? In August, on August 23rd, in a telecast on Bill Moyer, I think Bill Moyer, as Bill Moyer and Company, Bill Moyer put it best. We are so close to losing our democracy to the mercenary class. It's as if we're leaning way over the rim of the Grand Canyon, and all that's needed is a swift kick in the pants. The predators in Washington are only this far from monopoly control of our government. They have bought the political system lock, stock, and pork barrel, making change from within virtually impossible. Again, I don't think that it's a coincidence that shortly after the March on Washington and the legislation enacted to move us toward a more equal society, that ALEC was born. If you would like more information on ALEC, and I think that we all need to be looking into ALEC, you can visit our website, 10thlettertoyou.com, or the Center for Media and Democracy, or billmoyers.com. Again, in light of everything, all of the progress that we have had, we have a number of issues, and we have a number of things that we need to make sure that we are looking into and staying on top of. ALEC being one of those. I wrote a poem just prior to the 2008 election, and it's kind of summed up. At that particular time, I wasn't decided on whether my vote was going to go to Hillary or my vote was going to go to Barack Obama. And I was sitting in a coffee shop, and this thought came to me, and I'd like to share it with you. It's called a quandary of sorts. Do we act on change for the sake of it, or do we stay with the tried and true because it's the thing to do? Do we continue to conserve and preserve bankrupt policies and outdated ideas while thousands die in foreign lands, and here hundreds of thousands more rush headlong into poverty, homelessness, and despair? Or do we care? Are we swayed by words the likes of which we haven't heard since the days of Kennedy and King? My country, 'tis of thee, land of the brave and free. Is this the future of which we sing? Do we have the audacity to hope that someone like me can ascend to the office of the presidency, or that my little girl could one day be the leader of the free world? Can we hope for a better tomorrow? Or will the skies open and manna from heaven pour down to ease all our pain and sorrow? Or, after the people have spoken, will we get hipped to the notion that no matter who runs the plantation, it's the plantation system that's broken? 10th letter to you.